Shiki, an ordinary troublemaker recently expelled from school, finds his life irrevocably changed when an enigmatic assailant murders his father. Discovering his inherent demonic lineage, he resolves to harness his newfound abilities for vengeance. Centuries prior, a demonic race known as Uni terrorized Japan, laying waste to an entire pata. They indiscriminately slaughtered human, unchallenged by any, until a courageous figure named Mametaro rose as mankind as champion. Mametaro launched an assault on the Oni stronghold, decimating thousands. Yet this act merely ignited a protracted conflict between him and the demons. This war persists into the present day. Unbeknownst to him how this ancient legend intertwines with his own fate. A young man named Shiki is meticulously cleaning his gun collection, chatting with a friend on the phone virtually, recounting his recent expulsion from school due to a brawl. He expresses indifference, stating he was tired of his classmates' fights daily. At that very moment, his adoptive father, Tsuyoshi, appeared, striking him on the head and demanding an explanation for his expulsion. Shiki retorts, telling him to back off. Tsuyoshi attempts another strike, labeling him an ungrateful wretch, but Shiki deftly evades it. Tsuyoshi then questions the presence of so many firearms, reminding Shiki to operate a wine shop, not an armory. Shiki sarcastically remarks that their wine shop is barely afloat. He adds that everyone is aware of Tsuyoshi as the cunning clientele. Tsuyoshi retorts, ridiculing Shiki's arrogant demeanor despite his recent expulsion. Shiki, offended, declares he'll never be a failure like Tsuyoshi, and expresses relief they share no blood relation. This deeply wounds the older man. However, Tsuyoshi then descends for Abusina's skull. He subsequently departs for a delivery, leaving Shiki to Shiga, wishing had they been adopted by a wealthy individual. Shiki attempts to practice his routine, but an outdoor explosion startles him. He ventures outside to investigate, only to find his vision obscured the attic fog. Abruptly, a surge of peculiar black mist erupts from the fog, causing Shiki to recoil in astonishment. The mist pursues him. It seizes his leg, dragging him outdoor, before releasing him onto the street. As Shiki rises, bewildered by the event, a menacing old man in white apparel materializes. The man prepares to strike, but just then, Tsuyoshi reappears, ramming his car into the assailant, before urging Shiki to get inside. Tsuyoshi speeds off, declaring their only recourse is to flee the country immediately. Shiki, however, is still struggling to comprehend the recent occurrences. He questions his father about potentially killing someone with the car, but Tsuyoshi clarifies the man is not dead and they must distance themselves as much as possible. Visibly distraught, Tsuyoshi urgently instructs Shiki to listen, emphasizing their limited theme. He then reveals that Shiki is a descendant of the Oni. Furthermore, the recent attacker is a descendant of Mametaro. Shiki dismisses this, telling him to trust his ultimate jesting. Tsuyoshi insists that he is serious. At that moment, a black mist blade pierces the car's roof, which Tsuyoshi narrowly avoids. He understands their pursuer has caught up. Suddenly, black mist envelops the car windows, completely obscuring their vision. Tsuyoshi halts the vehicle near a derelict warehouse, swiftly exiting and instructing Shiki to find immediate cover. Instantly, the car explodes. Turning back, Tsuyoshi discovers Shiki is gone. Fortunately, he spots a trace of black mist leading into the warehouse. He deduces his son has been abducted and taken inside. Within the warehouse, Shiki is ensnared in a massive web formed from black mist. A terrifying man named Samidar stands before him, declaring that Shiki's very bloodline renders him nothing more than a nuisance. He adds that eliminating suspects is the duty of the Momotaro Agency. Shiki, still reeling from Samidar's survival of the car crash, is interrupted by Tsuyoshi as a rival. Tsuyoshi informs Shiki that the Momotaro fairy tale is, in fact, historical truth. He explains that for millennia, Momotaro and Oni have waged war through their respective descendants. These blood-linked descendants eventually united to establish the Momotaro Agency, thereby gaining a significant edge in the ongoing conflict. This compelled the Onin to conceal themselves among humans for survival. Shiki remains bewildered, but Tsuyoshi reassures him, saying he will take care of it. Samidar abruptly conjures two swords from black mist. In retaliation, Tsuyoshi manifests the same power to confront him. The two men charge, their blades meeting in a fierce clash. Their collision unleashes a potent shockwave. Tsuyoshi manages to repel Samidar, while Shen taunts him, claiming he is weaker than before. Samidar clarifies that the black mist has a unique power exclusive to Momotaro as descendant, and Tsuyoshi was on his superior within the Momotaro Agency. Shiki is stunned. He is horrified to learn his father is a Momotaro descendant, but Tsuyoshi claims to have completely forgotten. Samidar then questions if Tsuyoshi has also forgotten the purpose beyond it. Samidar proclaims that Tsuyoshi, for harboring an One, will also be eradicated. Tsuyoshi preemptively attacks, but their strengths prove to be evenly matched. Shiki watches their frantic battle in utter confusion. As Samidar interrogates Tsuyoshi, asking why he protects a creature solely bent on destruction. Tsuyoshi silences him, attempting to inflict severe injury. But Samidar proves far swifter than anticipated, effortlessly evading the assault. Samidar then lands a lightning-fast combo, gravely wounding Tsuyoshi and rendering him unconscious. Shiki is heartbroken, witnessing his father bleeding profusely, and forced to kill Samidar. Samidar, however, informs Shiki that he will soon join his father in the afterlife. At that precise moment, Tsuyoshi grabs Samidar as fate. Samidar questions why he did go to such lengths to shield an Oni. Tsuyoshi responds that he requires no justification to protect his son. He asserts that Shiki has yet to harm anyone, and it is unjust to kill him merely for possessing Oni blood. Samidar simply forms a black mist sword, intending to deliver the final blow. The fury within Shiki reaches its breaking point, his eyes turning crimson. He swears to eliminate the wretch attempting to harm his father. His demonic abilities awaken. Blood oozes from every facial pore, and demonic horns erupt from his head. Shiki roars his intent to kill Samidar. As Samidar turns, he discovers Shiki is no longer bound by the web. Immediately, several blood-formed goons materialize near his face. Due to his swift reflexes, he successfully blocks the shots. However, Shiki has already vacated his position. As Samidar ponders his hiding spot, they observe blood dripping from the rooftop, where Shiki hangs inverted, resembling a deranged Batman. Witnessing his blood-soaked form, Samidar comprehends Shiki is awakening. Shiki can now combat by manipulating his own blood, yet this is the most terrifying aspect of battling an One. Suddenly, Shiki punches on him. He repels Samidar with potent blow. Samidar swiftly retaliates, severing Shiki's arm. But Shiki leaps back, instantly regenerating the limb. Shiki then lets out a wild scream, causing Samidar to break into a sweat as he understands this battle will be arduous. Shiki manifests his power as a multitude of firearms, forged from blood, compelling Samidar to exert every ounce of his strength and speed to deflect the projectiles. Just then, Shiki unleashes a devastating missile at him. Guided by pure instinct, Samidar narrowly evades the incoming rocket, which detonates violently behind him, forcing the elder to flee. Retreating from Shiki's relentless assault, he hurls his sword, hoping for a swift victory. But this proves utterly insufficient. Shiki swiftly closes the distance, kicking Samidar away. Too exhausted and wounded to react quickly, Samidar is then subjected to Shiki stepping on his face before a full military arsenal as worth of ammunition is discarded upon him. Nevertheless, Samidar, despite being severely injured, miraculously manages to escape with his life. He charges Shiki, but then, without warning, Shiki collapses, and the blood-formed weapon shatters. His unique transformation dissipates, and stars in confusion at his bloodstained hands. Shiki is utterly bewildered, questioning what exactly just occurred. Samida recognizes this as a typical reaction from individuals who are experiencing the initial awakening of their inherent powers. Using his dwindling power, he once again conjured through outbreaks, determined to complete his mission immediately. Whereas, subscriber pastors Tatsuchigi, Tsuyoshi lives between them, sacrificing himself to protect his son. Samidar asks him how he could possibly risk his life to save the boy. Even after witnessing the monstrous transformation he underwent, Tsuyoshi, recalling Shiki as an adorable child, assures his old friend that finding joy in fatherhood was never a mistake, even if that happiness was brief. At that very moment, civilians, drowned by the sound of the explosion, gather at the scene and contact the fire department. Samidar decides to withdraw for now. He transforms into black mist and vanishes, leaving the injured Tsuyoshi and the bewildered Shiki alone. Shiki panics, telling his father how will call an ambulance, but Tsuyoshi urges him to stop, knowing that this is his end. He simply wishes to speak with his son one last time. Ultimately, Tsuyoshi reveals that he could never disclose his unique lineage, shows it would have meant informing him that there were individuals seeking to kill him, but no, his only play is for Shiki to grow strong enough to defeat both the Momotaro and Oni factions, so he can live a life of freedom and happiness. However, Shiki vehemently shouts at him to be quiet, asserting that their conversation is not yet finished. He begins to move his father outside, stating they will talk once he recovers. Tsuyoshi offers him a final, gentle smile before drawing his last breath and collapsing to the ground. Shiki loses his composure, first attempting to rouse him, and then breaking into uncontrollable sob. Soon after, a man on roller skates arrives. As Shiki turns to loud, the man knocks him unconscious with a single tap to his head, before transporting him to a place where only it was like him can truly grow stronger. While unconscious, Shiki dreams of the joyful moments he spent playing in the park. Under his father's watchful gaze, but then, the dream abruptly darkened, shifting to Tsuyoshi's death at Samidar's hand. Shiki awakens with a sudden jolt, as he stares into Samidar's bloodshot eye, but as he looks around, he finds himself gagged and bound to a cave in a vast, empty hall, directly behind him. The roller skating individual who updated him is performing an arm handstand push-up with his umbrella. He promptly returns to his feet the moment he notices Shiki has regained consciousness. The self-proclaimed edgelord introduces himself as an Ateo, revealing he is a fellow One, and swiftly manifests his horns. Shiki, overwhelmed by the situation, struggles to focus on an Ateo, who refuses to disclose their current location. He informs Shiki that his father's body is securely stored elsewhere and that Shiki was brought here for retrieval and assessment. And Ateo then abruptly glides towards a whiteboard situated in the corner, pulling it closer to Shiki before demonstrating the speed and efficiency of using roller skates instead of walking. Subsequently, he begins explaining the Momotaro agency to Shiki, noting that Shiki has already encountered an individual capable of manipulating the black mist as a weapon. The Momotaro agency's purpose is to locate and pursue One. And in retaliation, the Oni established their own organization to resist. And Ateo states his role involves identifying newly awakened Oni, such as Shiki, and escorting them to a secure location for assessment, to determine their suitability for joining the Oni agency. Following this conscious introduction, he returns the whiteboard to its original position, and then removes Shiki's gag, enabling him to conduct an interview. The moment the gag is removed, Shiki immediately begins shouting at an Ateo to release him, simultaneously hurling insults at him, and vowing to kill him if any harm has come to his father's body. And Ateo promptly subtracts a point from Shiki's already zero score, labeling him an imbecile for failing to grasp the meaning of Savuli story. A detail he had clarified just moments prior, CK, incensed, declares that he should never place his trust in such a dubious edgelord. And ATO, having anticipated such a reaction, resolves to further reduce CK's score for every course and demand for release, instructing him to cooperate. If he wishes to pass the assessment, CK, indifferent to the evaluation itself, prioritizes his swift liberation and thus attempts to suppress his rage. However, he proves incapable of even that, and then instructs him to chase his unsettling star. Shiki, provoked by this, loses his composure, prompting an ATO to opt for an alternative evaluation method. As conventional approaches appear ineffective with such nutjob, he unfastens his tea, and before Shiki can fully comprehend the unfolding situation, an ATO employs the tea to strangle him with all his might. Shiki panics as his breath is cut off, and an ATO declares that a being as authentic nature is unveiled when confronted with impending death, and this is precisely what he aims to observe. Shiki exerts his utmost strength in an attempt to resist, yet he remains trapped in the chokehold. Even as blood begins to seep from his facial orifices, he quickly loses consciousness, much to Nato's disappointment. However, the blood Shiki just shed, imbued with his power, awakens. It transforms into sharp, projectile spikes and assails an ATO who effortlessly evades the assault. Abruptly, an ATO finds a Gatling gun fashioned from blood aimed directly at his hand, with Shiki, now in his berserker state, positioned behind it. He unleashes a volley of fire upon Nato. Shiki then retreats, seemingly content, but his onslaught failed to even address the adjurer, who had shielded himself by encasing his umbrella in his own blood. An ATO subtracts 100 points from Shiki's score, cheating his inability to properly utilize his unique blood. He then resolves to demonstrate the correct method, despite knowing Shiki will retain no memory of it. As the berserker state subsides, Shiki abruptly lunges at an ATO, but an ATO is fully prepared. Several minutes later, Shiki regains consciousness. Lying vanquished on the ground, he struggles to comprehend the recent events. However, upon noticing his blood-stained hand, he panics, realizing he had once again lost control. An ATO calmly sets himself atop Shiki, explaining that his memory blank is a natural consequence, as only in berserk mode they habitually lose awareness of their surroundings. The hell is in complete disarray from their confrontation. Shiki retorts, telling an ATO to chase his lecture, especially since an ATO himself employs his blood as a weapon. An ATO promptly causes his blood umbrella to vanish. He informs Shiki that he never entered a berserk state because he possesses genuine control over his ability. He then announces that further discussion is unnecessary, as Shiki is disqualified from joining the Oni agency. Shiki remains utterly bewildered by the situation, yet one fact is undeniably clear to him, that an ATO possesses extraordinary strength. He resolves to set aside his pride and implores an ATO to accept him as a subordinate, driven by his desire to grow stronger and avenge his father. An ATO promptly rejects Shiki's plea, stating that individuals who neglect strategic thinking in combat, like him, are invariably the first casualties in genuine warfare. He labels Shiki a worthless embarrassment, incapable of managing either his intellect or his abilities, prompting Shiki to exert all his might to suppress his fury. An ATO subsequently announces his intention to eliminate Shiki, deeming a rampaging Oni adanya to arm and employs his unique ring to enchase his form, allowing a flow of blood to emerge. He transforms it into an umbrella, and Shiki abruptly conceives a plan to alter Nato's decision. Shiki retreats from Nato's rage, then charges at him, dragging his fist along the ground until it bleeds. Nato swiftly converts his umbrella into a barbed shield. This shield is designed to repel any close quarters assault, and NATO projects to anticipate Shiki's potential maneuvers. Shiki leaps forward at the final instant, a move NATO had indeed foreseen. However, Shiki then catches him off guard by utilizing the shot as Pegasus to propel himself sideways, aiming a blood-formed piston directly at NATO's face. Shiki channels all his concentration into the weapon. He fires a potent blast, the force of which sends him recoiling backward. He is astonished to have seemingly struck an ATL, but it becomes apparent that Aventis' attempt was unsuccessful. And ATO effortlessly intercepts the blood projectile with his finger, disintegrating it. He then is Shiki impressed for the assault, noting that Shiki had nearly succumbed to his berserker state. Observing Shiki's apparent descent into madness once more, and ATO resolves to end the confrontation with his signature technique, encasing himself within a defensive barrier. He then conjures archers forged from his own blood, poised to fire upon his command. Nevertheless, upon observing Shiki resisting his berserker impulses and successfully reining in his ability, and ATO aborts his special attack, Shiki feels assured of prey before mastering his power, but then collapses to the ground. This is due to his excessive expenditure of energy. And ATO is astounded that Shiki not only managed to command his power, but also managed to subdue his berserker state. And with few can accomplish, he demands to know how Shiki achieved this, but Shiki confidently retorts, instructing him to acknowledge him as his subordinate. In exchange for the explanation, and ATO states that he will consider it, which Shiki interprets as an affirmative. Shiki then explains that when ATO initially spoke of blood manipulation, he did not grasp the concept. However, witnessing NATO enchase his tomb and fashion a weapon from his blood, an idea sparked within him. Various on that since they were both honest, he chose simply imitate an ATO's technique, and astonishingly, it succeeded. He admitted he did not comprehend the intricate specifics. However, he merely allowed his arm to bleed, mentally commanding the blood to coalesce into a weapon. Shiki remains elated that his risky maneuver paid off. He then asks an ATO for his opinion, and ATO dismisses it as absolute nonsense, asserting that such methods are not how things operate. In his experience, impulsive and unintelligent adolescents, like Shiki, struggle to control their blood, whereas composite and logical individuals, such as himself, possess the greatest aptitude for wielding their power effectively. He believes Shiki disregards logic, and instead of letting his berserker mode take over, Shiki can use sheer instinct to compel his power into submission. He considers this a crude approach, yet one that can unleash immense power. He starts contemplating how to handle this peculiar situation when, unexpectedly, Shiki declares his need for strength to avenge his father and eliminate his killer. He informs an ATO that if he accepts him as a subordinate and imparts all his knowledge, Shiki will prove valuable. However, an ATO rejects this proposition, transforming his umbrella into a spear and stating that individuals like Shiki pose a societal threat. This is because Shiki was unaware of his own power control and simply took actions. And ATO declares he cannot accept him as a mere lackey, and then Veynes as Petrus, only striking the floor beside Shiki's again. He informs Shiki that he will not accept him as a subordinate, but rather as a student, a distinction that greatly perplexes Shiki, as he perceives no difference between the two roles. And ATO explains that Shiki barely passed the assessment but will be granted an opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities. Shiki struggles to comprehend the unfolding events. Consequently, an ATO to begin with fundamental information. He informs Shiki that they are situated on an island named Hell's Doorstep, formerly known as Onigashima. This location was where the legendary Momotaro solitaire demons did it now serve as a sanctuary for Oni. At the island's core stands the Rosetsu Academy, a military institution exclusively dedicated to training on to combat the Momotaro agency. Shiki becomes alarmed upon realizing he is on an island, but NATO pokes his facts, assuring him that his detail is insignificant, the crucial aspects. Instead, Rasatsu Academy will provide comprehensive instruction, encompassing general academics, control over his Oni-blood, combat methodologies, and the historical conflict between Momotaro and the Oni. NATO serves as Shiki's homeroom instructor and elaborates on the Academy's operational procedures, so this information proves overwhelming for Shiki's limited comprehension. Shiki, however, shows no interest in these details, his sole concern being whether he can acquire sufficient strength to avenge his father. NATO cannot offer him any assurances. Redo, however, inform Shiki that failure to achieve adequate strength to confront the Momotaro agency will result in his prompt expulsion. Shiki then dresses himself, feeling enthusiastic about attending this conventional school. Yem, NATO cautions him that other candidates have also passed the entrance exam this year, and Shiki is likely the less proficient among them. Abruptly, Shiki recalls his father and inquires about the location of his body. NATO responds that it has been preserved in the morgue, as they intended for Shiki to manage the funeral arrangements. In accordance with his customs, Shiki becomes somewhat despondent, reflecting on his father's demise, prompting NATO to tell him that dwelling in melancholy is unproductive, and he should instead concentrate solely on enhancing his strength to achieve his vengeance. Shiki remarks that NATO appears to be a decent person after all, which flusters NATO. NATO then rushes away, warning Shiki that if he fails to arrive at class before him, he will face expulsion. Shiki somehow manages to catch, and as he ponders the optimal way to enter the classroom, to maximize his aura gain, NATO simply kicks him through the door. Shiki feels he has injured an aura depth due to his indignified entrance. He then requests tissues for his nosebleed from a masked boy named Jin. Jin professes to be even more aloof and intense than their instructor. Jin cutely tells Shiki to speaking to him. Annoyed, Shiki begins to taunt Jin about his lack of visible horn. Jin effortlessly manifests his horns, remarking that only foolish novices who cannot control their horns display them constantly. This comment inadvertently offends another student named Hikari, who also struggles with horn control. The atmosphere in the classroom grows tense as Shiki confronts Jin closely. However, before any violence can erupt, NATO abruptly appears behind Jin. Shiki discovers himself seated directly beside Jin, without recalling how he got there. Jin is similarly astonished. However, NATO has no time to spare for his students' bewilderment. He announces that their inaugural lesson will be a game of tag. He escorts all the students into the forest, informing them they have an how to return to the school while evading his capture. NATO subsequently states that anyone failing to reach the school within the allotted time will be expelled, dismissing Shiki as protesters. He further instructs the students that they are permitted to utilize their ability, and he will only employ his own if someone enters a berserker state. Jin confidently remarks that he makes bad killing. Should he refrain from employing his ability, NATO expresses no objection. Conversely, he declares that anyone who successfully eliminates him will achieve immediate graduation. Such individuals will then be free to enlist in a unit they desire to combat the Momotaro agency. He further explains that the institution's role is to equip students for practical challenges, asserting his intention to assist them at every stage he inquires about their readiness. To which Shiki responds with a pledge that had climbed more and excel in the evaluation. NATO subsequently discloses an extra regulation, presenting to a spherical object, humorously noting, their size is inferior to his own. He informs the pupils that possessing one of these balls upon arrival at the academy is a prerequisite for clearing this particular assessment. Subsequently, they abruptly hurls them into a designated restricted zone. The students initially surmised that, given only two balls exist, a struggle for possession is inevitable, yet then, NATO discloses a team-based structure. The initial team comprises Shiki, Jin, and Desi, pink-haired Homer. The second continent includes the unruly individual known as Akari, and the intellectual Juji, Manuel. The third squad consists of the anxious Roku and Quina, who appears to be the most self-assured person present. NAT then addresses these three groups, stating his intention to enter the restricted zone a quarter of an hour after them, allowing them an initial advantage. However, Shiki interjects, declaring his unwillingness to collaborate with the Muscat eccentric. ATO informed him that failure to cooperate with him will result in expulsion, compelling Shiki to recant his earlier remark. Subsequently, Homer courteously introduces herself to Shiki, a young man entirely unaccustomed to any form of interaction with women. He only astonishes us later, corrects. Upon observing Homer as approached, and they boldly assures her of his protection, she becomes visibly flustered with his declaration, informing him that such an extreme measure is unnecessary, as her sole desire is to avoid impeding him. Next, she attempts to introduce herself to Jen, an aloof follower of that who completely disregards her. Homer's inherent lack of self-confidence manifests, leading her to weep and offer apologies for having addressed him. Shiki then begins to berate Jen for causing distress to the young woman. He swiftly shifts to console Homer, advising her not to mar her appealing appearance with tears. Following this, he reverts to provoking Jen. However, the that enthusiast instructs him to cease acting like a subservient admirer. NATO intervenes in their dispute, directing them to project indoors as time is limited. Jen and Shiki promptly sprint towards the forbidden woodland. After a period of bewildered observation, Homer also enters. Jin commences traversing the trees believing, reminiscent of a ninja from Naruto, pondering how eliminating NATO would secure his graduation and the privilege to enlist in an initiate uni. He aims to seize this opportunity to reach the vanguard and re-engage his primary adversary. Unexpectedly, Shiki attempts a rare assault, jolting him from his inner contemplation. Jin questions his sanity. Shiki asserts his intention to demonstrate superior strength. Jill, equally keen for a confrontation, then takes off his mask, exposing gruesome scars encircling his mouth. Shiki, unnerved, remarks that only the fable found past injuries, but Jin remains unaffected by his provocation. He merely takes off his gloves, disclosing that his hand is also adorned with suture marks. He then rips a stitcher, allowing blood to flow, which he subsequently transmutes into rotating saw blades. Shiki reacts with astonishment, believing the creator of Chainsaw Man will initiate legal action for intellectual property infringement. Jin instructs him to chase wandering time and retreat if fear grips him. However, Shiki retorts that escaping now would preclude him from seeking retribution for his father's demise. Jin is visibly startled by this revelation. Yena, he abruptly adopts a menacing demeanor, informing Shiki that mutual comprehension between them is impossible. Shiki declares that he has no desire to understand him. Initially, Ten beats his thumb to draw blood. Nevertheless, he is unable to transform it into a firearm on this occasion, leading him to panic. Pondering the precise method to activate his ability, he resolves to retaliate with a stick, his sole available recourse, but swiftly compresses his inferiority to Jen, who possesses the capability to sever trees with a single blow from his chainsaw-equipped arms. Concurrently, Homer, attempting to locate the two young men, suddenly perceives the resounding impact of trees, collapsing to the earth. She is instantly seized by panic, and her inferiority complex takes hold, convincing her she is unsuitable for such an environment. Nevertheless, her spirits left somewhat upon. Recalling Shiki's compliment about her cuteness and resolves to seek him out, oblivious to her proximity, merely as few fade away from one of the crucial balls. Concurrently, Shiki attempts to engage Jin in combat using only his very handy Jin, without even deploying his chainsaw abilities, effortlessly overpowers him. Shiki repeatedly questions how Jin manages such effortless control over his powers, but then he comprehends that Jin's unique ability diverges from his own. Tornado. His concentration wavers as he contemplates the fundamental essence of their respective power, allowing Jin to fail him with a solitary blow. Shiki experiences profound frustration due to this setback. Jin opts to allow the defeated individual to grieve undisturbed. However, just as he begins to move away, Shiki regains his footing, asserting that the confrontation is far from concluded. An incensed Jin immediately dispatches a chainsaw towards him, and at that precise instant, Homer appears, guided by her detrimental survival instinct. She remains entirely oblivious to the fact that she is directly entering the line of fire. Shiki panics upon witnessing this, but fortunately, he succeeds in moving her to safety. Despite sustaining a minor injury in the process, he swiftly rises from atop Homer and demands Jin apologies to her. However, Jin responds that any harm would have been her own responsibility. Had you perished from his comparatively feeble assault? Shiki is infuriated by this, but then he suddenly hears Homer repeatedly intoning apologies as if in prayer. He assures her it is not her fault. However, Homer appears to be in a trance, and her nose abruptly begins to bleed profusely. The blood gradually coalesces into the shape of a colossal human figure, causing both Jin and Shiki to react with extreme alarm. Questioning what attack on Titan escape phenomenon they are witnessing, Homer urges them both to flee, explaining that her female Titan intends to kill them. Immediately after her statement, the female Titan impacts the ground with immense force, and Shiki narrowly evades her assault. Jin, conversely, leaps directly towards the female Titan, intent on retaliation. Yet his chainsaw weapons prove largely ineffective against her enormous physique. Shiki inquires if Homer can halt the entity, and she apologetically states her inability to do so. She abruptly faints due to excessive blood loss. Shiki resolves to move her away from the female Titan to her area. Your eyes is initially personated at the social. And even Jin ponders whether Homer as blood possesses an independent consciousness. Abruptly, the female Titan begins to violently expel blood. While Jin seeks cover behind a boulder, Shiki endures the entire impact of the assault directly. The weeping Homer implores the female Titan to kiss, referring to her as elder sister. Shiki resists, perplexed by her statement. Homer reiterates her prayer for him to flee, but Shiki declines, asserting that she will succumb to blood loss if he fails to assist her, and he is unwilling to witness another death before his eyes ever again. Unexpectedly, the female Titan unleashes a formidable roar. The shockwave of which extends even to the remaining students beyond the forest. He observes the entire scene from a treetop, opting to allow Shiki and Jin to attempt to manage Homer as blood-based power. Prior to his intervention, returning to the site of the conflict, Shiki attempts to wound himself to extract blood for use as a weapon, but this effort proves unsuccessful. The female Titan assaults him, and he evades. However, the female Titan then gathers several rocks from the earth and propels them towards him. He sustains an impact and is thrown a considerable distance. What truly wounds him is his current state of utter feebleness. Accustomed to victory, he now perceives himself as nothing more than a worthless child. Overwhelmed by vexation, he begins to weep. Jin then emerges, joining the fray, and dismisses him, suggesting her return home if he is going to shed tears. This infuriates Shiki. Shiki retorts that he was merely sweating from his eyes, but Jin pays him no mind. Instead, he aggravates his injuries, and on this occasion, he manifests a pair of distinct chainsaws. On HR, the injuries sustained from the female titan as prior assault continue to trouble him. Nevertheless, he remains resolute in his commitment to triumph in every confrontation. From a distance, NAT observes, marveling at Jin's ability to conjure two different weapon types simultaneously. NAT then starts to elucidate that while blood can assume a shape on visions, its manifestation is frequently shaped by an individual's past traumas, inclinations, and life experiences. Concurrently, Jin charges the female titan, utilizing his circular chainsaw to ascend. He then attempts to emulate Lavi Ackerman aesthetic by targeting the female titan as Nappa. However, she sacrifices an iron to shield herself. As Jin battles the female titan, Shiki desperately orders his hand to materialize an object, pondering why he struggles to forge a weapon when Jin does so effortlessly. Then, as sudden realization dawns on him, Jin exclusively crafts implements for Severin, and even Homer shares a unique bond with her female titan. Shiki surmises he can create her arms, given his greater affinity for them, compared to the average American. He abruptly comprehends how to command his abilities. Meanwhile, Jin is encountering significant difficulty in his struggle against the female titan. She unexpectedly emits a deafening roar, rupturing his eardrum. Jin loses his equilibrium, convinced he is able to proceed, and even NAT prepares to intercede. Just then, Shiki announces his intention to take over the battle. He aims a formidable grenade launcher directly at the female titan, and ATO is astonished by his ingenuity. Shiki, eager to test his new armament, is then assailed by the female titan. He deftly evades her strike before launching a grenade at her. This immediately obliterates her, leaving both Jin and NATO at his immense power. The female titan begins to dissipate, her remnants scattering across the area. Homer, Manuel, loses consciousness. Jin remains utterly astounded by Shiki's destructive capability when, without warning, blood begins to fall like rain. Yet, it was merely the blood dispersed in the atmosphere. From Shiki's preceding assault, which quickly transformed into ordinary precipitation, Jin comprehends that Shiki's strike not only vanquished the female titan, but also altered the meteorological condition. Shiki, conversely, gives this no thought, instead moving towards Homer to ascertain her well-being. His set then bruised, and he collapses to the ground, immobilized. At that moment, NAT approaches, informing him that he had just expended an absurd quantity of blood, which is why his body is now devoid of strength. Shiki asserts and he can still persevere. He somehow compels himself upright, but this lasts less than 5 seconds before he tumbles back to the earth. And AT already seems as an amateur incapable of managing his own abilities. Yet he acknowledges that Shiki's power transcends anything he has ever witnessed, by choosing Shiki that depleting too much blood could even result in his demise. This causes Shiki to express concern for Homer rather than himself. He requests NAT to attend to her fears, fearing she may have expended a significant amount of blood, and stated he is content to be examined afterward. NAT was taken aback by Shiki's concern for another individual, especially given his own critical state. However, just as he prepares to offer assistance, Jin initiates a sudden assault. Fortunately, NATO's reflexes prove swift enough to parry the strike, and he repels Jin, while then informs him they have no need to fret over the losers. NAT inquires about the consequences if Homer perishes due to a lack of immediate medical attention. To which Jin responded that it is of no concern to him. NATO is repulsed by this statement and unequivocally declares to Jin his disdain for self-centered individuals such as him. Jin, however, remains equally unconcerned by this sentiment. Jin merely requests NATO to affirm that he will be allowed to graduate should they eliminate him. and Ateo assures him of the truthfulness of his word, which is sufficient for Jin to charge directly at him. And Ateo paris Jin as blood chainsaw with his umbrella, which is forged from the same indestructible material as the Hulk's trousers. Heichen activates Abutot, deploying a smoke screen. Jin assumes an Ateo is attempting to ambush him, confident in his ability to dispatch an Ateo. The instant he enters his effective range. However, in the very next moment, he is struck by several rapid bullets. He promptly seeks refuge behind a tree, while an ATL continues to discharge rubber bullets from his versatile umbrella in Jin's direction, stating that while the projectiles won't be lethal, he will inflict excruciating pain. He had also deliberately aimed for Jin's previously injured hand. To maximize the impact, Jin deduces that an ATO intends to maintain a secure distance, believing that Jin is limited to close quarters weaponry. Nevertheless, Jin possesses several concealed tactics for such situations. He promptly abandons the tree as concealment, evading Nato's incoming bullet before launching a volley of flying blasts at him. An ATO effortlessly evades this, yet he is astonished that Jin possesses a countermeasure for adversaries capable of nyagging from beyond his typical range. Jin persists in his assault. He then materializes behind an ATO in mid-air, assuming his opponent will be defenseless. However, an ATO simply hurls a bomb at him, causing Jin to panic. Fortunately, it proves to be another innocuous smoke bomb. Jin believes an ATO will once again attempt to shoot him from a distance, which is why he completely fails to foresee an ATO approaching from behind, then striking him with a devastating, spine-crushing punch. An ATO then admonishes him about the perils of being overly confident in one's battle predictions. As such certain renders one susceptible to unforeseen assaults, Jin is now too wounded and fatigued to even stare. Yet he persists in his efforts, compelling an ATO to invert his umbrella. Man employ it as a containment kaki. Jin continues to struggle against the umbrella, and an ATO question if he is familiar with this latter. Jin approves dalam apa ini? He then asks an ATO how he acquired such knowledge. An ATO responds that he reviewed Jin as research, thus becoming privy to certain details about him, including the revelation that his father is a Mametaro. Every fiber of Jin is being rebels at this disclosure. Shiki is astonished to discover their sharp background, yet Jin is consumed by animosity. He confesses that his father is indeed a Mametaro, and that villain stripped him of everything, murdered his family, and subsequently subjected him to experimental, leaving him covered in scars. Jin recalls his survival by scavenging and the profound animosity he harbors for his father. He vows to personally end his father's life, even if it means jeopardizing his own. In his furious state, Jin experiences a sudden surge of power, enabling him to dislodge the confining cage. However, before he can make any further move, an ATO seizes him by the face. He then slams Jin to the ground, labeling him a stupid brat. An ATO informs him that being in pursuit of his aspirations would make him a fool, ensuring he would never realize them. He advises Jin to leave so that his dream can eventually be fulfilled, even if it necessitates enduring defeat and disgrace. With that, Jin finally chases his true glass, and ATO then contacts the school, requesting a nurse for an injured student on city. He notifies the institution that Homer has been withdrawn from this examination due to her significant blood loss, and Jin has also been restrained. Shiki, however, remains on his feet, and ATO informs him that he has barely 6 minutes remaining before the deadline expires, holding on of the required balls. He tells Shiki that he can either attempt to seize EA from him or locate the other remaining ball within 5 minutes and make his way to the school. Shiki protests that it is unjust, but acknowledges he has no alternative but to obey Binato's stipulations. The individual promptly flees, prompting Shiki to pursue him to ascertain his actions. Concurrently, Jin remains motionless, bound to a tree. Unexpectedly, Shiki emerges from the nearby foliage. He approaches Jin, offering to release him on the condition that Jin agrees to collaborate. Jin is taken aback with his proposition. Shiki explains that neither of them can overcome an ATO individually, but a combined effort offers a possibility of success. Jin declines, stating that being self-defeated would diminish his self-respect. Shiki, ignoring the insult about being an idiot, then questions Jin, asking if his personal pride outweighs his objectives. Given that he cannot accomplish his aims by simply remaining in place, Jin inquires why Shiki shows such contrast toward Shiki discloses that his own father was also a Momotaro. This revelation stuns Jin. Shiki then employs a familiar tactic, akin to Naruto, asserting their shared nature. In the interim, NATO is actively searching for Shiki. Unable to locate him, NATO suspects Shiki has not returned. Just then, he spots Shiki fleeing, muttering curses about Jade, and resolves to corner him without delay. Shiki comes to an abrupt halt as NATO intervenes, informing him that his team is experienced, all while ostentatiously displaying his band. Internally, Shiki begins to curse Jin. His frustration stems not from Jin's lack of assistance, but from Jin's desire to be in command despite having just been rescued. At that precise moment, Jin leaps down onto NATO from above, targeting the ball, but NATO effortlessly evades the assault. This, however, was merely a diversion. Jin's actual maneuver involves hurling a stone attached to a rope at NATO. The rope swiftly encircles and restrains NATO. Shiki then seizes the opposite end, and both he and Jin begin to pull NATO with all their strength, but NATO firmly braces himself, digging his heels into the ground. Quite certain that his opponents lack the endurance to defeat him. Unexpectedly, Jin unleashes a blood-bag attack at NATO, compelling him to evade it. In his attempt to dodge, NATO loses his footing. His momentary vulnerability is all Shiki needs, then he charges forward and strikes the ball from NATO's grasp. The ball rolls to a stop near the end, and NATO is quite convinced that, should he attempt to carry out to the scrum, Shiki will undoubtedly try to snatch it. He intends to retrieve it from them while they are preoccupied fighting, but to his astonishment, Shiki instructs Jin to seize the ball and flee. Jin promptly complies, and Shiki enthusiastically encourages him, declaring to NATO that they have successfully acquired the ball. However, NATO then reminds him that only the individual who delivers the ball to the score will pass, implying that, at this patch, it will solely be Jin. Shiki is dumbfounded by this sudden understanding, and NATO, in turn, recognizes Shiki as an utter simpleton who fails to weigh the generation and race. First little Tartargas tickets, and shoots for Jin to retreat, but Jin is now too distant to hear him. Jin is confident that he can reach the throne within the allotted time. At his current speed, Jin had reached this achievement would be impossible without Shiki's assistance, and he suddenly finds himself unable to simply leave him behind. He pivots and rushes back towards Shikam, who is utterly bewildered and asks if Jin is as geographically enough as Zoro. Jin shortly tells him to be silent, explaining that his sole motivation for this action is his unwillingness to owe his triumph to Avon. He would prefer to find or attain his objective through his own efforts, and consequently, he instructs Shiki to take the ball and proceed to the academy. However, just as they are on the verge of making contact, a diminutive, pink creature rushes towards them at high velocity, halting precisely between the two. NATO promptly suspends the test, informing them that fighting is inappropriate when Muku, their swift courier delivery animal, is present. He understands that Muku is only deployed during emergency, and he proceeds to activate the radio device mounted on its back to retrieve an urgent request for reinforcement from the Kyoto branch, which is currently under assault by the Momotaro Agency outside the designated test area. The remaining students are patiently awaiting their turn, assuming handshake, and the others have failed since the time limit has already expired. Nevertheless, NAT reappears at that very moment, accompanied by Sheikei and Jin, and addresses the other students, informing them that the Kyoto branch fetched Grafbarin and has requested reinforcements, thus they will be proceeding there instead of continuing the examination. We promptly board a vessel and set sail towards the Kyoto branch. The students express varied sentiments about being deployed to actual battlefields so rapidly. However, NAT or reassures them that they will not be engaging in combat, stating only requires their assistance in supporting the primary combatant. They soon arrive in Kyoto, and NAT guides them to the vicinity of a renowned temple, explaining that the Oni Agency's headquarters are situated directly beneath it, and then escorts the students to an unassuming restaurant, where an unsettling elderly woman greets them. Upon reaching the living room, the old woman uncovers a controlled subterranean staircase, which will guide them to their intended location. Concurrently, at a different seat, Tsubakiri, a captain within the Momotaro Agency, has just completed the eradication of an Oni unit. He disparagingly refers to them as a swarm of maggots masquerading as soldiers. His vice captain, Yomogi, informs him that he has once again been excessive. She laments the extensive mess he created, noting that it will be troublesome to clean up. Tsubakiri responds by stating that he simply becomes overly irritated whenever he encounters maggots. He expresses a desire to live confronted female Oni instead, as he believes they are more robust and possess a higher pain tolerance than males, rendering them ideal subjects for his experiments. Yomogi declares his experiments repulsive and expresses her disdain for them, particularly for the entity now approaching time. Tsubakiri instructs her not to be unfeeling towards his preferred creation, which is a hybrid of a dog, a monkey, and a Friasanu. He has christened it ugly, and that is the sole point on which Yomogi can conjure with him. Tsubakiri asserted that ugly serves as both a crucial research specimen and a devoted constituent of their anti-Oni biological weaponry. Yomogi reminds him that their primary duty is to eliminate dangerous Oni and safeguard civilians, suggesting he should contribute more to this mission. Instead of squandering his time on unsettling investigations, Tsubakiri informs Hei that Oni blood is the only truly captivating subject, and he is endeavoring to assist in his unique manner. He asserts that if they can master the independent manipulation of Oni blood, it would undoubtedly provide the immense benefit to the Momotaro Agency. And furthermore, he suggests that if they could transform the regenerative properties of Oni blood into a medicinal compound, they would amass more wealth. Can Ellen, Jeff, and Zook put together. Yomogi points out that even the Momotaros possess comparable abilities, no way Tsubakiri responded that experimenting on human subjects is imprudent. Nevertheless, in his view, the Oni are mere maggots, and they contends that they should be subjected to experimentation, as simply killing them constitutes a waste. A frightened young Oni child overhears this entire conversation, while concealed by an eye corner. He makes every effort to remain silent. As soon as he perceives the footsteps of the two Momotaro agents moving away from his position, he lets out a sigh of relief. This, however, proves to be his fatal error, as Tsubakiri hears him and instantly moves towards his hiding spot. The shot becomes terrific, and Tsubakiri resolves to transport him to the laboratory. Yomogi offers to render the child unconscious to prevent eye difficulties, but as she attempts to sedate him without anesthetic, a single drop of blood lands on Tsubakiri's skull. Yomogi immediately understands that this portends trouble, not for herself, but for the young Oni. Subakiri approaches the shield and begins to kick him, declaring that despite his fascination with Oni blood, it is ultimately a defiling substance, and he will not tolerate it staining his uniform. He then questions the child about the proximity of his parent, and whether they belonged to the group he had just eliminated. Receiving no reply, Subakiri presents the nearby Oni corpse to a terrified child, inquiring about his parentage. The child is too scared to respond, prompting Subakiri to brutally crush him using the bodies. Yomogi finds this deeply disturbing. Among all the Mamataro power she has witnessed, Subakiri's ability to manipulate the black mist emanating from their bodies is the most sinister. This mist is, in fact, a unique bacterium residing in their bloodstream, which they can weaponize. Subakiri, however, possesses a more advanced application. They can manipulate this bacterium to control the chest bodies, aside Yomogi struggles to accustom it to. After dispatching the boys, Subakiri instructs Ugi to consume the massive Oni dumpling. As they proceed to hunt for more maggots, Shin and other students are guided by an ATO through Aspatios Tunam. An ATO explained that certain local businasses have private access to this tunan, which connects directly to their hidden base. They soon arrive at a gate opening into an area situated directly beneath the Ryuda Temple. The space is designed to resemble a traditional Japanese residency. The students are astonished when an ATO reveals it to be the main headquarters for the Kyoto branch of the Oni Agency. At that moment, a doctor emerges from a room, grumbling about his workload, but his demeanor instantly shifts upon spotting an ATO. The doctor enthusiastically greets an ATO, then begins primping his hair, not teaching the attractive blondie. She, however, promptly rejects his advances. This rejection doesn't phase the smitten doctor, as he is accustomed to such rebuff. She inquires about the eccentric individual, whom ATO identifies as Kayoya. Kayoya, the commander of the Kyoto-based support unit, mentions that he and an ATO were academic classmates. An ATO, however, has no patience for this trivial conversation. An ATO resolves to proceed directly to the frontliners. Shin requests to accompany him, and other students express a similar desire, preferring to avoid the peculiar Kayoya. An ATO disregards their pleas, instructing Kayoya to utilize the beds as he says fit before departing. Just then, he nurse orders Kayoya to return inside and resume his duties. Observing the academy student, she immediately tells them to change, emphasizing the urgent need for all available assistance. They swiftly don assistant nurse uniforms. They then proceed to a makeshift hospital, where numerous injured Oni are groaning in agony. A newly admitted Patin has suffered the loss of both his legs. In addition to other critical injuries, Shiki is appalled by his state, and the nurse grimly states that, at this rate, he has only 3 minutes left to live. Kayoya simply smiles, assuring the Patin they won't let him praise. Shiki, however, sharply reprimands him, urging him not to make such reckless and insincere promises. Kayoya acknowledges Shiki's sincerity and compassion but informs him of his significant role here. He then resolves to demonstrate to the youngsters what true support operations entail. Elsewhere, Subakir and Yomogi have just concluded their confrontation with another group as captain and vice captain. The surviving Oni are now utterly terrified of them. Subakiri expresses his disappointment at facing yet another group of inconsequential opponents, having anticipated a formidable adversary. His wish is instantly granted as an ATO arrives, and swiftly activates his powers. Subakiri is glad to see him, but an ATO doesn't allow him much time for satisfaction, immediately unleashing a deadly attack. The Oni are relieved Binato as arrival, believing he is clear to rescue them, but Subakiri emerged unscathed from the initial assault, having used the deceased Oni captain and vice captain as human shield. It is revealed they already crossed an ATO, He converses with NATO FGRU old acquaintances, questioning his presence in Kyoto, as it's outside his usual territory. Subakiri then mentions hearing about a specific location, where Kyoto is on a congregating, suggesting that eliminating that single spot will resolve the entire issue. NATO maintains an impassive expression, stating he has no knowledge of such a pledge. Subakiri responds that they consider if even NATO denied its existence, then declares he will go sightseeing instead around the Grand Temple. NATO inwardly panics, aware of Subakiri's exceptionally grand instincts, and resolves to halt him immediately, preparing for a serious confrontation. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, Kayoya inserts numerous blood tubes into his body, prompting Shiki to inquire if that blood should be administered to the wounded. The nurse silences him, instructing him to observe as Kayoya approaches the most critically injured man, asking if he wishes to regenerate his hands or feet, explaining that both are not currently possible. The man, gathering all his remaining strength, states he wants his arms back to embrace his children once more. Kayoya assures him it is possible, but once the procedure will be excruciating. He translates his own wish, allowing his blood to flow into the injured man's mouth. Asserting that it dramatically amplifies anormal oni as yelling capabilities. As soon as his blood begins to take effect, the man screams in agony, and the nurse instructs the students to restrain him. Shik and the others promptly obey, while simultaneously she directs others to retrieve more blood from an adjacent room. Shortly thereafter, something begins to protrude from the man's bandaged arm, unsettling Shiki. As she observes something vaguely resembling human digits, other students also recoil, and then, abruptly, the injured man's arms regenerate, and even the severe burns on his chest heal entirely. Shiki immediately approaches Kayoya, asking if his legs can also be regenerated. Kayoya confirms, but specifies it must be done gradually, and with small, controlled doses of his blood. He explains that the injured man has already ingested a significant amount, and further intake could lead to antibody development. Kayoya then turns to the Patin, informing him that he will be retired from the combat unit but can join the support unit to assist others. He assures him that with prosthetics, he will be playing with his children very soon. The man is brought to tears beat his news. Kayoya then addresses the student as, warning him that he could one day find himself in a similar predicament. He acknowledges their desire for glory and reputation building, which is often pursued on the frontliners. However, he remains dim that frontline fighters can only perform courageously because there is a reliable force protecting their rear, and that force is the support unit. Shiki and several others are now deeply impressed by him, offering their readiness to assist in a capacity. Kayoya informs Shiki he requires his assistance with a different task, and leads him to a despondent girl named Mai, admitted yesterday. Following an attack by the Momotaro Agency, her parents remain missing, and Kayoya hopes to leverage Shiki's compassionate nature to comfort the girl. Shiki accepts the assignment and attempts to converse with the girl, who slowly begins to confide in him. He asks about her schooling, and she reveals she never attended. While Shiki ponders if there is a delinquent like himself, the support unit brings in several deceased individuals from the battlefield, among whom are Mei's parents. She erupts into uncontrollable soba, upon seeing them. Kayoya admits that even after all this time, he still struggles to accustom to such heartbreaking sight. Nevertheless, a more profound and malevolent humility behind his body than onion comprehended. Subakiri informs NAT that he infected several Oni corpses with his specialized bacteria, knowing full well the support unit will transport them to their base for a proper burial, enabling him to remotely control the bodies, and subsequently destroy the facility. NATO is stunned by this revelation. Subakiri then decides to test his plan as success, reanimating my is father as corpse while Shiki and Kayoya are preoccupied. Her joy at his apparent survival is short-lived as he, under Subakiri's influence, begins to choke her. Shiki and Kyo immediately perceive the danger. Recognizing this as Tsukikiri's power, Koya instantly commands Shiki to shield my vision. Shiki complies, and Koya swiftly ends the man as life by impaling his brain with a pair of sharp blades. With the assailant incapacitated, Mai bursts into tears after Shiki permits her to witness her father as the mist. Kyo and the Duchess had other puppet-like on their territories could be present. His realization comes to light, however, as the reanimated puppets begin to stir, and Mai's mother abruptly decides to assault Shiki. She begins to choke him before he can even comprehend the situation. Koya resolves to swiftly incapacitate her, but before he can retrieve his surgical tools, additional zombies ambush Koya from behind, pinning him down. Shiki, equally helpless, feels his brain as oxygen supply diminishing, causing him to lose consciousness. A similar scenario unfolds across the entire headquarters as the undead begin assailing the support personnel, who are utterly unprepared for combat. The abruptness of the assault renders them vulnerable, making them simple prey for the zombies to overpower. Concurrently, the undead breach the chamber where severely ill patients are undergoing medical care. Both patients and medical staff come under attack, leaving everyone at a loss for a solution. Back in the adjacent room, Shiki struggles to maintain his awareness. While Mei weeps, imploring her mother to release Shiki, he urges the girl to distance herself from the undead creature, clarifying it as no longer her parent. However, Mai disregards his warnings. Koya attempts to intervene but is overwhelmed by the zombies. Perceiving no immediate assistance, Shiki retrieves a glove from his person. It is disclosed that an ATO had provided him with this firearm while aboard the vessel. An ATO had advised him that his blood control abilities were still insufficient, suggesting he employ a weapon he was proficient with should combat become necessary. Furthermore, he was informed that the pistol utilized Shiki's own blood as projectiles instead of conventional ammunition, promising a significantly greater impact if ever deployed. The opportune moment has arrived. Shiki first draws Miner, intending to spare her from witnessing the ensuing carnage. He then aims the weapon at the injured woman as yet and discharges it, terminating her existence. Shiki regains his composure while Koya remains pinned beneath three zombies. Fortunately, Shiki rapidly regains his faculties, dispatching each zombie with a headshot before assisting Koya to his feet. Koya voices his dissatisfaction with the support unit's lack of readiness for such emergencies. He then delegates the responsibility of clearing the areas to Shiki, while he focuses on evacuating the patients. Within the main home, the remaining students are engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the zombies, uncertain of the true nature of the threat. They ponder how to permanently incapacitate the undead, given their resilience to even severe injuries. At that precise moment, Shiki and Koya make their appearance. Shiki informs everyone to target the cranium, explaining it as the sole method to neutralize the zombies. He promptly begins, delivering headshots in every direction. Jin is the first to emulate his action, tearing open his own suture and performing impromptu surgery on the zombie before him. The others, though, slowly grasp the necessary course of action, seizing this opportunity. Kaya instructs the support personnel to evacuate patients and attend to a newly wounded individuals. Concurrently, Shiki continues to discharge his weapon at the zombies as if possessing an endless supply of ammunition. Yet he considers the act of slaying the already deceased to be the most repulsive death of his existence. He begins to develop profound psychological distress, contemplating that every zombie he eliminated was once a living individual cherished by family and friends. He feels on the verge of tear and questions the rationale behind harming their own kin, when their true adversary is the Momotaro agency, Manuel. and Ateo remains locked in a confrontation with Tsubakiri. He opts for close quarters combat, but Tsubakiri employs 3 ditches on as a defensive variant, and Ateo is unrugged. However, Gaten spots the monstrous ugly beside him, poised to deliver a crushing strike. He narrowly evades the assault at the final instant, but Ugly obliterates the 3 Oni, and Ateo expresses his displeasure, but Tsubakiri retorted that he should be pleased the past plaguing this world are eliminated. And Ateo counters by stating that regardless of his mace, he cannot triumph in every conflict as a solitary fighter. Tsubakiri finds this assertion ironic, coming from another individual who operates alone. His argument is validated within moments, as his allies offer fair assistance, but he instructs him to retreat to safety, believing they will impede his effort. Tsubakiri then declares that no one will depart from this location. He then orders his assistant, Mamogi, to execute her task. Mamogi steps forward, employing her ability to erect an unyielding barrier around an Ate and the other Onin, confining them. Tsubakiri informs an Ate that he cannot exit this containment field without Mamogi as consent. And in the interim, he intends to explore the Oni headquarters. And Ateo panics as Tsubakiri discloses that he had affixed transmitters to all the Oni corpses, which have now converted directly beneath the Eruda temple, thus confirming it as the Oni as main base. Tsubakiri then begins his advance towards the temple. He then instructs Mamogi to dispatch Ugly into the closed space. She grants the creature permission to breach her barrier, and Ateo braces himself for combat. Nevertheless, Tsubakiri remarked that this creature is mass-produced, making its sacrifice entirely acceptable. He then snaps his fingers, and Ugly's abdomen abruptly begins to distend. And Ateo comprehends its imminent self-destruction, and urgently commands everyone to take cover, but the confined space offers insufficient room. To evade the blast, which possesses enough force to rupture Mamogi's protective field and demolish adjacent structures. Mamogi inquired if they should revive Nato as the mess. To ascertain Nato as dead, but Tsubakiri dismisses the idea, citing excessive smoke and his reluctance to soil his attire. This decision proves erroneous, as despite his unconscious state, and Ateo appears to have sustained no significant visible injuries. Meanwhile, back at the headquarters, Sheik and the owner have successfully vanquished all the undead, and Koya has relocated the patin to a secure area. He presumes their difficulties are now resolved. However, Regent observes Mai staring vacantly at the remains of her parents. He approaches to offer comfort, joined by Shike, who apologizes to Mai for having shot her mother. Yeah, she responds with chilling indifference, stating it is acceptable. Shiki is taken aback by her reaction, but Mai proceeds to explain that she had constantly been fleeing from place to place, concealing herself from an unknown menace. She lacked freeness, never attended school, and harbored a premonition that such an event would eventually occur. She forces Esmil, instructing Shiki not to be concerned for her, and his heart breaks upon hearing this, prompting him to recall his own early years, and the way he had always looked up to superheroes in the traditional narratives. Momotaro is portrayed as the protagonist, while the Oni are depicted as antagonists. He questions if this is truly the modus operandi of fairy tale hero. He then abruptly embraces Mai, proclaiming his intention to become a villain, and dismantle all heroic figures. He pledges to Mai that he will forge a world where she can once again find joy, leaving her unsure how to reach it. Shortly thereafter, Koya brings Jin along for assistance, outlining his intentions to cremate the deceased Oni. However, Jin shows no interest in his discourse. Conversely, the remaining students are laboriously moving the bodies towards the funeral home, but the concert scholar named Juji appears to be preoccupied with different toilettes. Hikari instructs him to chase his idliners and provide assistance, to which Juji responds that he has developed a theory regarding the recent assault. Juji suspects the headquarters security is compromised and anticipates another assault. His unique talent is better suited for reconnaissance. Opting for vigilance, he promptly pricks his tomb, allowing blood to drip onto the earth, which forms a radar capable of detecting a living entity. This radar spans a 5-kilometer radius and can even identify Momotaro agents. Ikari is profoundly struck by Juji's power, just as Juji detects hostile individuals nearing their stronghold. These signals originate from Tsubakiri and Mamoge, who have arrived at the store acting as the clandestine entry point to the Oni headquarters. The elderly proprietor is already deceased, and Mamogi has located the tunnel as entrance, which she is currently examining. Tsubakiri contacts the Momotaro agency, requesting the deployment of multiple standard Uglis to his position, along with a unique, custom-designed Ugly he personally created. He also inquires about a particular high-priority Oni, whose name has slipped his mind, before preparing to infiltrate. Mamogi cautions here that the area appears expansive and likely teeming with Oni. Therefore, vigilance is crucial. She proposes deploying poison gas to simplify their task, but at that precise moment, Tsubakiri retrieves the dossier on the high-risk Oni, revealed to Beshiki. He informs Mamogi that poison is no longer an option, as he intends to capture Shiki alive. Her surprise is evident, and Tsubakiri explains that Shiki possesses exceptional qualities for an owner, a unique opportunity for experimentation he cannot forgo. Meanwhile, Kayoya leads you to the crematorium where their fallen comrades are incinerated. Jin is visibly startled by the sight, and Kayoya remarks that when conflict erupts with the Momotaro agency, casualties are inevitable, which cautions Jin about the perilous path he is embarking upon. However, he reassures Jin not to fret excessively, as he possesses remarkable regenerative abilities. Following this, he abruptly becomes overly familiar, inquiring if Jin has a romantic partner. Jin utterly disregards the eccentric individual and departs as Kayoya pursues him. He abruptly perceives an approaching presence from behind, pivoting at that very instant. He is impaled by Tsukikiri, who had actually targeted his back to but missed it. Kayoya is too stunned to respond, but Jin instinctively unleashes his blood-forged chainsaws to engage the adversary. Yet, before he can achieve, Momogi materializes behind him, ensnaring his chainsaw within her black prison. Subsequently, she fractures his arm. Jin cries out in agony, but the black prison confining his arms begins to falter. He endeavors to concentrate on their foes, enduring the pain. He comprehends they are in the direst predicament. Both he and Kaguya are wounded, and they lack eye intelligence on their adversaries. Nevertheless, Kayoya remains remarkably composed despite the circumstances. Kayoya instructs Jin to hasten back and inform everyone of the enemy incursion, while he delays the two Momotaro agent Jin complice, vowing to return with assistance. Kayoya then directs his focus to the two opponents before him. Tsubakiri prompts Mamogi to unleash her ability, and she conjures an immense barrier, encompassing the entire headquarters. At this juncture, Kayoya discerns that her power involves generating barriers using her bacteria, and her intention is to ensure no one escapes the headquarters alive. Kayoya starts evaluating his choices, as he is unable to engage in combat and believes the student lack the power to defeat the formidable adversary before him. He concludes that backup is not imminent, which can only signify his impending demise. Abruptly, Tsubakiri questions if he knows Shiki, and Kayoya comprehends this situation is far more intricate than he initially assumed. He resolves to resist with all his might. He extracts a poison shering from his jacket. Nevertheless, before he can deploy it, Tsubakiri slashes his neck, inflicting a deep, profusely bleeding wound. Kayoya panics, having failed to even retrieve the attack, and collapses to the ground, his blood spurting everywhere under high pressure. as he slowly drifts into unconsciousness. He wishes that if death is inevitable, it would be Mamoru who delivers the final blow. Tsubakiri, however, has no intention of fulfilling this desire, believing Kaguya to be already deceased. Convinced Kaguya is dead from his long streak, he contemplates controlling the corpse via his bacterium but abruptly pauses, sensing the ugly creatures beyond the barrier. He instructs Momogi to allow him entry, and she grants the uglies access. Tsubakiri then inquires if they have delivered the item he requested. One of them regurgitates a large book. He then commands the uglies to uncover ID, revealing an ornate wooden blocky. Tsubakiri instructs the uglies to transport the box with care. As they continue their search for Shiki, simultaneously, Jin arrives at the headquarters to alert Everion. He is astonished to find no one in the vicinity, but upon entering the mine hall, he discovers everyone prepared for battle. They express relief at Jin's appearance, but he is puzzled as to why the area all assembled in one location. Shiki informs him that Juji's ability detected approaching enemies, prompting their swift action to evacuate all patents. However, before the remaining individuals could flee, a black barrier sealed off the exit, leaving them trapped. Some individuals propose searching for an alternative escape route, but the nurse confirms she has thoroughly checked and no other exit exists. Shiki then inquires about Kaguya Tojie, but before he can respond, an ugly creature appears. Everion is stunned by the sight of the grotesque monster and allows it to pass through him towards an unsuspecting individual, who is then consumed as Everion observes. Everion opts to flee rather than confront the monster, and Shiki resolves to keep myself by his side. Shortly thereafter, Tsubakiri and his companions enter the deserted hall. He instructs the uglies to set down the coffin, then sets himself upon edge, commanding Momogi to apprehend Shiki alive and eliminate all others. She asks if he will accompany her, but Tsubakiri declines, stating he has significant matters to ponder. Meanwhile, the blonde antagonist, Kyuna, is shifting through crouching in a restroom, seeking a turn that allows for greater mobility. Concurrently, the melodramatic Rokuro is also present in the same space. Lamenting his impending death, due to an irregular heart rate, Kyuna advises him to improve his physical condition, if he is prone to collapsing after minimal exertion. She then obscures his face to prevent him from saying her change, and, with a touch of irony, she dons revealing dim attire. Rokuro inquires about her next move, and Kyuna responds that she intends to prepare an ambush. Understandably, he feels envious of healthy individual. Upon hearing this, perpetually fearing Enos, just they detect the heavy footsteps of an ugly creature. Drawing nearer, Rokuro panics, informing Kyuna he is incapable of fighting under such stress, and implores her to intervene. This play unexpectedly excites the antagonist, as he realizes being in complete command. She instructs Rokuro to conceal himself in the closet, assuring him she will manage the situation. He nervously complies with her directive. Kyuna then positions herself facing the dune, awaiting the enemy's arrival. The ugly smashes through the wall and enters the chamber. However, before engaging, it questions Kyuna. If she is Shiki, she angrily retorts that Shiki is the stupid-looking delinquent. And upon hearing this, the monster abruptly begins assaulting her. It demolishes the closet where Rokuro was hidden, causing him to lose consciousness. Meanwhile, Kyuna resolves to demonstrate her dominance to the creature. After the room has sustained sufficient damage, she beats her thumb, and her blood coalesces into boxing gloves around her fist. Concurrently, Jin rushes back to check on Kaguya, and Akari also readies herself to confront a monster. Simultaneously, Shiki prioritizes concealment to ensure Mei's safety. The only refuge called Lochat was the garden. Meanwhile, Rokuro regains consciousness, discovering the room as profound silence, and initially believes the preceding events were merely a nightmare. Emerging from his hiding spot in the closet, He is startled to see the monster as fast directly before him, causing him to panic as he struggles to comprehend the bizarre scene. The situation escalates instantly. When the creature reaches and submissively approaches Quiana, she gently strokes its face before maneuvering it into a specific stance. With a forceful blow, she fells the beast, 10 months out, delivering a relentless series of powerful strikes to its height until it loses consciousness. Rokuro is no 3 feet off her, yet Kuina revels in utterly destroying the monster, then projects to stomp on it as it leaves defenseless on the floor. This power stems from her ability, I Love, which transforms foes covered in her blood into subservient beings, stripping them of any desire to resist her. Meanwhile, Rokuro tentatively emerges from the closet. He inquires if she truly vanquished the monster single-handedly. Quena, with a proud demeanor, remains in that she had instructed him to entrust everything to her. The rationale behind this statement is not due to her being a reliable individual eager to assist others, but rather because she possesses sociopathic tendencies, deriving pleasure from rendering everyone utterly reliant on her. To the point where they become entirely incapable of independent action. At this moment, Rokuro has become her latest victim. He kneels before her, expressing gratitude for his rescue, which instantly amplifies Quina's inclination to pamper him. Entering an excessive mode, she spreads a bedsheet on the floor and gently settles Rokuro onto it, assuring him that he has no choice for concern as she will manage all matters. His proximity to her makes him uneasy. Kuna observes his pale and frail appearance, prompting her to fetch him some food, which only intensifies Rokuro's panic. He suspects a trap, believing no girl would ever show him such extensive attention, and starts to tremble with the dread that she intends to use him as bait. As the next creature approaches, Quina is fussing over him escalates. Just then, a different monster materializes, and Quina resolves to confront it. Prior to resuming her primary task of thoroughly pampering Rokuro, she dismisses this monster as another feeble opponent and opts for a swift resolution. However, this monster proves significantly more formidable than the last me. It wields its arm like a whip to strike her, piercing a hole through the one behind her. Rokuro instantly retreats back into the closet. Kiona, infuriated by the monster's disruption of her enjoyment, lunged at it, activating her abilities mid-leap, but the creature effortlessly evades her pinch. It then impales her shoulder with its grotesque tentacle-like arm. Queen manages to break free, but the monster subsequently uses both its limbs to bend her, rendering her unable to utilize her powers. In this state, the monster begins to draw her nearer. When she struggles, it merely yanks the binding, causing her to collide with the ceiling. The creature then starts violently slamming her around the room, leaving her utterly helpless. Ultimately, she is thrown to the ground, and the monster projects to stomp on her head. Rokuro is consumed by panic at this second. Yet this useless space of trust is capable of nothing more. He merely observes Quina's brutal demolition, wishing for someone to intervene and assist her. He does not even consider himself capable of helping, believing he is all clean and assured. But this realization dawns on him, he has become a pathetic loser. Unbeknownst to him, he had transformed into Tia. He chose appeared when he was a timid fellow, and it feels as though an eternity has elapsed since then. Rokuro was raised in a secluded, underdeveloped village, where Mayuni succeeded with humans. His first love was a girl named Luli. He consistently attempted to impress her by demonstrating his perceived coolness and courage. Despite his inner fear, he felt invincible with Lulu beside him. Lulu, in turn, remained constantly near him. They largely spent their days together in joy. However, beneath the surface of that seemingly perfect existence, all was not well. Lulu was it, and being an Oni. The shouldn't be treated by conventional physicians. The village sole Oni doctor managed to maintain her stability and health, until one day the Momotaro agency launched a raid on the village. He assassinated the Oni doctor, and without his care, Lulu's condition deteriorated. Rokuro vowed to hire that he would swiftly find another doctor. That from a neighboring town, he implored her to trust him, asserting he would do anything for her. Lulu responded by saying he had always been the coolest person she knew. She requested her remain that way indefinitely, and then passed away almost immediately. Rokuro was utterly shattered and devastated by this loss, and shortly thereafter, he lost his inner drive. He no longer possessed any motivation for bravery or self-assurance. His hair prematurely grayed, and he suffered from insomnia. His mental well-being plummeted, transforming him into the failure he is in the present. While Rokuro contemplates his decline, the monster shapes its head into a sharp whip, intending to deliver the final blow to Kiona. Rokuro resolves to allow it to complete the act, believing himself incapable of rescuing Anyone. Yet, at that precise moment, Lulu's parting words echo in his memory. She had told him to always remain cool. This realization abruptly ignited something within him. Just as the monster lunges to finish off Kuina, Rokuro dashes forward, snatching her from harm as well in a fraction of a second. He understands that Lulu would be profoundly disappointed in his current state, and he refuses to allow that to occur. He gazes at the unconscious and wounded Kiona, then reflects that she fought so valiantly to shield him. Now, it is his moment to reciprocate. Nevertheless, he is currently overwhelmed with terror, and is uncertain if his courage can endure the impending battle. Buddha chose Lulu once more and composed himself. He beats his tomb, releasing his blood, which then coalesces into the likeness of Lulu. With his beloved now before him, Rokuro's composure deepens further. He asks her to remain by his side, acknowledging that he may not be as cool as she would have wished. The blood-formed Lulu embraces him from behind, and the crimson liquid gradually envelops his body, dispelling his anxiety and panic. However, this manifestation is not his genuine power. Rokuro can only unleash his true ability once he achieves complete self-assurance. His blood now fully encases his form, and Rokuro abruptly transforms into what appears to be a K-pop idol. The monster assails him post-transformation, but Rokuro effortlessly evades its trick, then executes several elaborate aerial spins before alighting behind the creature. The chamber is already saturated with flower-like petals composed of blood, each on a lethal shooting edge. As these petals make contact with the monster, its body is torn to shreds. Yet the monster astonishingly endures the assault. Rokuro, conversely, radiates immense confidence, bolstered by Lulu's presence. He dares the monster to strike him, then gracefully evades every incoming blow. He subsequently leaps to attack the creature, his mind drifting to memories of summer festivals, where he once danced with Lulu. Immersed in recollections of his girlfriend, Rokuro skillfully dodges the monster's assault, severing its arms, thereby compelling it to fade oozing on its feet. He dances throughout the room, saturating it with petal blades, then delivers a fatal combination of attacks to the monster, dismembering it. Meanwhile, Shiki is with Mei, assuring her that she can now relax, as the repulsive monsters have vanished. However, Mei remains deeply depressed over her parents' demise and contemplates whether she should have perished alongside them. Shiki firmly tells her to dismiss such thoughts, reminding her that her parents sacrificed their lives to save her, and that if she were to die, their sacrifice would be meaningless. He urges her to continue living and to combat the despair threatening to consume her. He suggested that the first step she can take is to cheer him out as she defeats the villain responsible for taking her family. With that declaration, Shiki rises, resolved to seek out and vanquish the Momotaro. Nevertheless, Mei is convinced the cannot triumph. Shiki counters bitterly. Her has and Ate or regains consciousness, roused by his companions. He learned he was unconscious for a quarter of an hour, and they expressed their thanks. Despite having absorbed considerable damage to children, Nato dismisses his own injuries, resolving to head straight back to headquarters to aid his students. Upon returning to headquarters, Shiki arrives in the main hall, where Tsukikiri is casually present. Shiki introduces himself, then directly questions if Tsukikiri is the villain, who transformed the dead into reanimated corpses. Tsukikiri gravely confirms it. Shiki then challenges him, asking how he could show such disrespect to the dead. Tsubakiri merely laughs in response, asserting that Oni are not human, and therefore lack human rights. Enraged bitches, Shiki draws his pistol, aiming it at him. Tsubakiryu, however, simply observes him with an intrigued gaze. Elsewhere, Jin rushes to locate Kyuya, only to behold Bimamoge, who reveals that the doctor has already perished. She inquired if Jin wishes to avenge his departed comrade. He retorted that Kyuya holds no significance to him, but he will readily eliminate any Mametaro he encounters. Jin deploys his formidable chainsaw blades, and Mamogi, in turn, activates her own abilities to counter. Jin lunges, striking her with the full force of his attack. However, Mamogi shields herself by conjuring an unyielding chamber around her. She then steps out, dissolving the protective enclosure immediately after, deflecting the assault, and informs Jin that his feeble attempts are utterly incapable of harming her. Jin interprets this as a direct challenge, intensifying his resolve to eliminate her. Concurrently, Tsubakiri hurls a knife at Shiken, aiming to disarm him, while taunting him to chase his childish games and unleash his genuine strength. Shiki is infuriated by this, then resolves to unleash his full mega to annihilate him. They conjures a formidable rocket launcher. His power filled by unadulterated fury and resentment, and declares to Tsubakiri that he will spare no effort in his destruction. She reflects on Mei's immense suffering at the hands of this villain, and then on Nato's prior instruction not to employ his full power. Due to his inability to control it, Shiki, refusing to be dictated to, ignores the warning and unleashes the rocket launcher at Tsubaki, resulting in a colossal explosion. Nevertheless, Tsubakiri deftly evades the assault, prompting Shiki to seize the moment and taunt him, inquiring if he was so terrified that he felt compelled to conceal himself to preserve his life. Shiki's attention then shifts to a nearby coffin, and he ponders its contents. Tsubakiri responds to his unspoken question. Maybe unsealing the coffin slit, from which a figure clad in Momotaro's traditional attire emerges. This individual proclaims his mission to exterminate all Oni, and Shiki deduces that is it. Yet another of Tsubakiri's reanimated creation. Shiki labels him a callous creature, demanding to know how he could possibly convert the remains of his own comrades. Pintomer puppet Tsubakiri responds with a sige, dismissing Shiki as a simpleton incapable of independent thought. He then informs Shiki that individuals are endowed with something known as free will, and that his reanimated companion had, in fact, willingly consented to be transformed into a puppet after his demise. Shiki finds himself unable to grasp why anyone would opt for such a fate. Just then, the reanimated Momotaro abruptly unleashes its power upon him, directing dark shockwaves towards Shiki as healed, and within mere seconds, Shiki discovers his body has become so incredibly heavy that he is unable to remain upright. As the zombie relentlessly employs its ability, Tsubakiri reveals that when other Mametaro are converted into zombies, he gains access to their unique power. His current associate specific ability involves combining material with the ambient oxygen to render it extraordinarily dense. Concurrently, the reanimated figure persistently repeats its mantra about eradicating One. And Tsubakiri confesses that he, too, was initially astonished. Where he first heard it articulate, he remains uncertain whether it is a deep-seated grudge or sheer determination that allows this animated corpse to vocalize. But he considers it the epitome of Momotaro spirit. he continues to exert pressure on Shiki using the zombie's power, questioning how long Shiki can possibly withstand a significantly more powerful adversary. Elsewhere, the Oni continent accompanying NATO endeavors to penetrate the dark barrier Mamogi has erected around their headquarters. Their weapons splinter upon striking the formidable wall. They contemplate seeking alternative entry points, but NATO informs them it will be fruitless, as the barrier likely encompasses the entire perimeter. The subordinate on hand inquire if he possesses the capability to demolish the wall. While NATO is certain called HFA, he deems such an action all advised. There are currently tourists present at the temple situated above them, and if he were to obliterate the war with his full might, their lives could be jeopardized. They only fall into a panic as they lack the authorization to evacuate the visitor, prompting NATO to begin formulating a plan. At that moment, Juji, the intellectual, arrived, informing NATO that they had detected enemy signals early and successfully assisted in evacuating the injured to safety. Nevertheless, some support personnel and the majority of the students remain trapped inside. NATO comprehends the urgency of rescuing everyone, but prior to that, the tourists must be evacuated. Precisely there, some owner report to NATO that they've discovered an eccentric individual outside the entrance, who is none other than Homaira, who has at last recovered her faculty. She continuously murmurs about her unworthiness to be in such an exquisite location. NATO, however, expresses his relief at seeing her. Abruptly, Juji begins behaving like a complete leisure, revealing his particular fondness for dearest and school uniforms. He informs Homaira that he wishes to present her with his car. Manche is utterly repulsed by his advances. Even NATO is taken aback, as he had previously considered Juji to be the most conventional individual among TCR's eccentric recruits. Nevertheless, NATO discerns a method to leverage Homaira's unique abilities for the evacuation of the tourist and promptly escorts her to the forest. Encircling the temple, NATO then contacts Juji, who is positioned within the temple, and informs him of his intention to induce a minor earthquake and a subsequent landslide to compel all tourists to evacuate. Juji is visibly stunned by this proposal, but NATO reassures him that it will be a controlled, minor landslide, ensuring no one will be harmed. The Oni soldiers are already strategically dispersed throughout the temple to facilitate the evacuation process. NATO instructs Juji to conduct a thorough scan of the area post-evacuation to verify that everyone has departed. Following this, he directs his attention to Homaira, and requested that she summon the female titan she had previously manifested, explaining that this entity will be responsible for initiating the landslide. Homaira expresses apprehension that she might lose control. However, NATO reassures her that he will manage the situation. Despite his comforting words, Homaira is too terrified to employ her abilities, leading NATO to concede. He informs Juji that the landslide strategy is now abandoned, then they must devise an alternative approach. He then informs Homaira that she is expelled, stating he has no eyes for unproductive burdens on his team. He begins to skate away. However, visibly anxious, Homaira explains that she is simply too terrified to utilize her power, which she cannot control. NATO responds that experiencing fire is not the actual problem, but rather, the refusal to evolve is the significant obstacle. He acknowledges the accidental incident Homaira caused in the past, yet points out that every individual in his class carries a burden some history. That weighs them downly. He impresses upon Homaira that she must be the one to take the initial stride towards transformation, as no one else can assist her otherwise. She then proclaims her desire to change, then abruptly beats her tomb, causing blood to gush forth. This blood coalesces into the form of the colossal titan, which immediately begins to assault NATO. and Ateo deftly evades the incoming attacks. The powerful impacts from the family titan cause the mountain to tremble violently, and Homaira starts to panic, apologizing for her inability to control her immense power. However, an Ateo reassures her that it is perfectly acceptable, as this is precisely the outcome he desired at this moment. Consequent to the Titan's assault, the very ground begins to tremor. Then enormous sections of the mountain start to dislodge and slide downwards. This development incites widespread panic among the tourists, prompting the Oni soldiers to immediately instruct him to evacuate. After everyone evacuates, UGS radar confirms the clear, prompting an Ateo to question with the female Titan. An Ateo then incapacitates Homer, ending her destructive spray. Simultaneously, Jin battles Mamoge, was a black boxes force him to retreat, leading him to keep his distance. Unbeknownst to him, Mamogi materializes a box directly behind him, ensnaring him. He finds himself unable to escape the confinement. Mamogi resolves to inflict a drown-out and agonizing damage, commencing the box as contraction, while informing Jin he will be compressed into a pool. Jin retorted that he will force his way out, losing brute strength. However, Mamogi dismisses this as impossible, especially as the enclosure tightens further, remarking that the brain begins to panic. When an individual is confined in a cramped area, causing them to lose all capacity for action, she anticipates Jin will suffer the same fate as the box continues to constrict. Yet abruptly, she perceives the distinct sound of a blade striking the interior wall. She considers such an action utterly unfeasible within such a restricted volume. Nevertheless, Jin holds further astonishments in store for her. The box abruptly fractures, then explodes into fragments, revealing Jin as he steps forth, with chainsaws extending from his back. He informs Mamogi that he once resided in the air conditioning duct of a derelict structure, a place characterized by its cold dampness and putrid odor. In contrast, he declares her box to be akin to a luxurious vacation. Infuriated by this remark, Mamogi resolves to end him with her subsequent assault. However, at that precise moment, a severed monster head is hurled into the vicinity. The perpetrator is revealed to be the delinquent Akate, who harbors intense anger towards the Mametaro, for presuming they should eliminate him with such insignificant force. Jin instructs him to stand down, asserting that this confrontation is his alone, but Takari is already resolute in confronting the Mametaro before them. Yet, upon observing Mamogi as him, he completely loses his composure. He starts admonishing her about her attire, urging her to wear more appropriate clothing, but she remains indifferent to my opinions regarding her appearance. Ikari then spills his blood onto the ground. Though less its inherent power, Mamogi, however, attempts to ensnare both young men within her cage initially. Regrettably for her, Ikari proves far too swift and nimble for her assault. He effortlessly evades her offensive maneuver and delivers a forceful kick to her jaw, visibly disorienting her. Mamogi is taken aback, having been utterly unable to anticipate the strike. It transpired, however, that even Ikari himself was incapable of foreseeing the outcome of his own point. His unique blood ability bestows upon him a randomized capability, contingent on his level of rage. Presently, he has acquired a pair of enchanted crimson boots that augment his speed and nimbleness. Akari Moses that he ought to have been angry to manifest a superior weapon. Mamogi, conversely, merely categorizes him as a speed-based adversary Ati struggles against, concurrently beyond the protective barrier. And Ati unleashes a specialized assault to dismantle the barrier. The entire headquarters begins to tremble violently, and they comprehend that the structure is on the verge of collapse. Nevertheless, they firmly believe that the lives of their comrades, imprisoned within, are far more precious than the edifice itself, necessitating their swift extraction. All occupants inside the building, also perceive the intense vibrations and understand the urgency of a rapid evacuation. Meanwhile, NAT and his contingent arrive at the location where Mamoji is engaged in combat with Yin and Akari. NATA informs Mamogi that she is no cornered. He asserts that after deploying her ability on such a massive scale for so long, she must be depleted of stamina. He commands her toil, stating that escape is no longer an option for her. Mamogi, however, retorts that she had no intention of fleeing. She casts acid her at her, revealing only a thin covering of black bacteria, as she proclaims her intent to eliminate everyone present. Concurrently, Tsubaki resolves to control his confrontation with Shiki, but Shiki deftly rolls out of the effective radius of his gravitational assault. Harry summons his rocket launcher and fires at Bing, yet the zombie manipulates gravity, preventing the projectile from even reaching him. Tsubaki then demonstrates an additional capability of his zombie companion, decompressing oxygen into a compact sphere that achieves immense density due to his abilities. He subsequently propels this gravity-infused out towards his opponent. This inflicts severe internal trauma upon him. Eliciting groans of agony from Shiki, Tsubaki expresses disbelief that he is indeed the progeny of Kishan, who was once referred as the most formidable Oni general throughout history. He confesses his disappointment and Shiki, who appears uncertain whether to even credit this narrative. And with that, this video concludes. Please remember to show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next installment.